What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name's CJ. This is Out of Bounds DFS, and in today's video, we're going to be looking at the PrizePicks board for NBA single stat. We're going to switch it up. Yesterday, we did some fantasy projections. Today, we're going to look at some single stats. So that's real life points, rebounds, and assists. So if this is your first time to the channel, welcome to Out of Bounds DFS. On this channel, we talk all things single-player daily fantasy sports, which means PrizePicks, Monkey Knife Fight, some of these other sites that'll continue to pop up, I'm sure. More specifically, we're focused on PrizePicks and NBA right now. So if this is your first time to the channel, hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications so you don't miss any of my content. There's still about 48-49% of you who watch these videos that aren't subscribed. So if you're watching my videos on a daily basis, it helps me out for you to click that subscribe button. Let's continue to grow. We're on our way to 700 subscribers. I would love to hit that number before the end of March. So without further ado, we got a pretty large NBA slate to talk about. We've got tons of injury news we must discuss before we can move forward. So let's start with the first guy on the list, which is Kemba Walker here. Boston Celtics, he's doubtful, likely to be rested. Victor Oladipo, Houston Rockets, doubtful, likely to be rested. Fred VanVleet, questionable COVID protocol. Pascal Siakam is also questionable due to COVID protocol. Kevin Durant, Brooklyn Nets, out with a hamstring injury. Joel Embiid, out with a knee injury. DeMar DeRozan, San Antonio Spurs, out for personal reasons. John Wall, Houston Rockets, out with a knee injury. Christian Wood, Houston Rockets, he's questionable. He is expected to play today, so big news there for Houston. They need all the help they can get with the way things have been going for them this season. OG Anunoby, Toronto Raptors, is out with COVID protocol. Marvin Bagley, Sacramento Kings, is out with a hand injury. Serge Ibaka, Clippers, questionable with a back. Tristan Thompson, Boston Celtics, doubtful. Daniel House, Houston Rockets, questionable. Wayne Ellington, Detroit Pistons, doubtful. Kevin Love, power forward, Cleveland Cavaliers, doubtful. Monte Morris, Denver, out. Rodney Magruder, Detroit, questionable. Eric Gordon, Houston, out. Blake Griffin, Brooklyn, out. Hassan Whiteside, Sacramento, questionable. Gary Harris, Denver, out. Patrick Beverley, Los Angeles Clippers, out. And Ben McLemore, questionable for the Houston Rockets. So as you can see, the Houston Rockets are really beat up. They need Christian Wood to play tonight. Got some big names that are out. Victor Oladipo, Kemba Walker, Fred VanVleet, Pascal Siakam, Kevin Durant, Joel Embiid, DeMar DeRozan, John Wall. I mean, tons of injury news. So with that in mind, we can go ahead and start looking at some single stat stuff. So where I'm going to start today's video is right here with this DVA tool. DVA, defense versus archetype. So instead of just using point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, and center, Roto Grinders takes things a bit further. They take point guard and they break it up into, is he a distributor point guard? Is he a combo guard? Is the center position, is he a post-up big? Is he a versatile big man? So it kind of gives us more specific breakdowns for each player and their respective positions. So what I've done here is I have sorted the assist versus average column, and you can see that everybody who's in that bright green color, they get a boost in the amount of assist that they'll have versus their opponent tonight. So in this example, Jeremy Grant, Detroit Pistons power forward, based on his archetype versus the Toronto Raptors, he should see a 36-37% boost in assists versus what they allow on average. So let's start with Jeremy Grant. He is projected for 2.5 assists here. And we're going to kick things off by going to one of my favorite websites, lineups.com, where we can look at player stats for a season average, a 30-game average, and a 10-game average, to help us get a better idea of how these guys have been performing. So if we filter out just looking at the Detroit Pistons here, you can see that for the season, Jeremy Grant is averaging 2.9 assists. So that would give him a good chance to go over, right? Then we look at the 30-game average here. Jeremy Grant's assists are actually up to 3 assists. So I like the over once again for Jeremy Grant. And then finally in his last 10, 2.7 assists. So it dropped a little bit from his 30-game average when you look at the 10-game average to 2.7, down from 3, but still that's plenty to get you over that 2.5. So you factor in that he should get a bump in this matchup versus the Raptors, and the fact that he has been going over 2.5 assists for the season, 30-game and 10-game averages. Things are looking good for a Jeremy Grant over on assists. But we won't stop there. We'll go over to RotoWire, where I've got all of the NBA player props loaded, and you can see the various sports books here. And we're going to look for Jeremy Grant's name here, so we'll do a quick search. All right, and you can see DraftKings Sportsbook, they have him at 2.5. FanDuel has him at 2.5. BetMGM has him at 2.5. And PointsBet does not have his assist prop up. But of the sites that do have him up, you can see that FanDuel people are betting the over here. And on BetMGM, they are also betting the over on 2.5 assists. Now, the game totals in this game, not particularly high. So 215.5 points here in terms of game total. But what does look good is the fact that the spread is just 3.5, meaning that this game should stay close and competitive, giving Jeremy Grant every opportunity in the world to hit this 3 assists that he needs to go over 2.5. So I'm liking Jeremy Grant and the way things are looking for him on the over 2.5 assists so far. So let's see who's next. If we go back here and see if there's anybody else that stands out. Saddiq Bey, he's not on the board right now for assists, so we can move on. Tyler Herro, let's see. He looks like he gets a pretty big bump against this Memphis Grizzlies team. And we're going to see if he's up on the board today for PrizePicks. I don't see him, unless I skipped him. Nope, not seeing Tyler Herro. Jimmy Butler, I didn't see him either. I don't think they have this Miami Heat Memphis Grizzlies game up on the board yet. No, they don't. Anybody else standing out? LaMelo Ball. LaMelo Ball is up here. Now, he was like at 7 assists, I want to say, the other day. He's down to 6 today. But you can see versus this Denver Nuggets team, he should get a boost here in the amount of assists that the Nuggets allowed to players who fit his archetype, which they consider him to be a distributor, a pass-first point guard. So in a situation like that, he should see a boost, it seems, versus this Denver Nuggets team in assists. So let's take a look at that. We'll start with the game totals, which I should have done in the last guy we looked at, Jeremy Grant, but we'll start here. And you can see this game has a pretty good amount of points here. 229 is the total. The spread is 6.5, with Denver being the 6.5 point home favorite. So a little bit of risk here in terms of blowout. LaMelo does get pretty good run though. Being a younger guy, they typically play him. Now, where I will say that there's been a little bit of caution around LaMelo Ball is that the Hornets seem to be fully healthy now. They got Rozier, they got Ball, they've got Hayward, they've got Devontae Graham. So things have been a little bit tight here in terms of production for these guys. So let's just take a look at LaMelo. We'll head on over to lineups.com and we will look at the Charlotte Hornets roster, and we'll start all the way back for his season average here. And for the season, 6.3 assists for LaMelo Ball puts him over the 6. So I'm liking the way things are looking for a potential over on LaMelo Ball assists. And if we look at his 30-game average, it goes up to 6.8. Fantastic. And then in his last 10, 6.9. So his assists have actually gradually started to go up when you look at season, long average versus 30-game and 10-game. Now, I want to take things a little bit further here and just look at his last couple of games more specifically, because I mentioned that Devontae Graham has been back, and I just want to see his game logs for his last couple of games. So we use basketballreference.com to take a look at this, and you can see in his last few games, the assists have been harder for him to come by here. We've got 4, 6, 9, that's a good one, 5, 8. So in his last few games, going over 6 assists has been somewhat difficult for him. He's done it in just 1 out of, 5 games, we'll say. 2, no, he's went over 2 times. He's got 1 push in his game log. So over twice, under twice, and 1 push. So it's been difficult to kind of trust LaMelo Ball to go over 6 assists, even though things are looking like a potential over is in play. So let's take a look at his prop here over on the various sites, and you can see that on DraftKings they've got him at 6.5, but people are strongly betting the under here. The juice is on the under over there. Same for FanDuel Sportsbook, everybody's taking the under on 6.5. BetMGM, the under is the way to go, and finally PointsBet is taking the under as well. So a lot of the juice here on LaMelo Ball and his 6.5 assists are on the under. So they think that he will only have like 6 assists or even less than that. So yeah, he's probably one that I'm not seeing a clear cut way to go here. So I'm probably going to take the fade. I'm actually not going to take LaMelo Ball. I don't think that that feels like a sure bet or a safe pick in any way. So let's see who else we have on the board here. Sometimes you just have to fade guys when it just doesn't feel right. And in this case, it doesn't feel right to me. I think it's a very tough call there. So who we got here? We got Norman Powell at 2.5 assists. He looks like he's in a plus assist situation here at a 20% boost. That's what Detroit allows, is 20% more assists to people who fit the shooting wing classification like Norman Powell. Now, Norman Powell's not a big time assist guy, so we're going to have to really dig deep here and see if this 2.5 is something that he can do. And we know that the Toronto Raptors are very beat up. No Van Vliet, no Siakam, no Anunoby. So maybe the 3 assists is in the realm of possibilities here. So let's take a look. We'll look at the season averages first. We've got Norman Powell at 1.9 assists for the season. So that puts him under 2.5. Not looking good so far for an over. But then it starts to go up a little bit in his last 30, 2.1, but still that's under 2.5. And then finally in his last 10 games, much better, 2.9 assists would put him well over the 2.5. So I want to dig a little deeper on Norman Powell. So we're going to take a look at his recent game logs. And I'm showing you guys exactly what I do here when I look into single stats for these guys. If we go down and look at some of his last few games and his assists, well, he's hit 5. Then he drops down to 2. 4, 4, and 1. So in his last 5 games, he's went over 2.5 assists in 3 out of 5 games. Not terrible, not terrible. And finally, we'll look at the various sports books and see how they land on Norman Powell. Well, unfortunately for us, there are no props out there on the various sports books for Norman Powell on these assists. So we don't have any other information to go off of. But overall, I would say that Norman Powell's got a good chance here to go over 2.5 assists. I know these game totals aren't particularly great here for the Toronto Raptors Detroit Pistons game. Just 215.5 points. So yeah, it's a little dicey, but I would probably lean toward the over on Norman Powell. Now, we'll go back to this tool here, and now that we've hit a couple of guys that might be in spots to go over, we're going to flip the table here and flip the script and look at guys that are in negative assist spots and see if there's anybody that maybe we could take the under on their single stat assist prop here. You got Khris Middleton. He's in a negative assist spot, so he's at 4.5 over on PrizePicks. And basically what this is saying is that the Philadelphia 76ers, they don't allow as many assists to scoring wings as they do some of the other positions. So minus 29.76%. So knowing what we know now, we can head back over to lineups.com and we'll flip this over to season and we'll go find the Milwaukee Bucks. There we go. And for the season, you can see that Khris Middleton's at 5.6 assists, which puts him well over 4.5. Now, if we look at his last 30 games, you've got 5.6 assists, which still puts him over 4.5. And then finally, in his last 10, his assists are at 5.3. So he has been going over 4.5 assists for a good part of the season. Looking at the game totals here for this particular game, you could see that there is a ton of points on the board, 235.5. So despite the fact that the 76ers might limit guys like Khris Middleton in the assist category, I would say that with high game totals, with a pretty close competitive spread here, and the fact that Khris Middleton's been going over 4.5 assists with pretty good success here, that you may not want to go under on this guy tonight. Let's just check and see how the various sports books are stacking up here for Khris Middleton. So you can see DraftKings, they've got him at 4.5. People seem to be betting the under. Then you got him at 4.5 on FanDuel. People are betting the over. 4.5 on BetMGM. They're taking the under. And finally, 4.5 on PointsBet. They are leaning toward the under on Khris Middleton. So this is going to be one, guys, that is a bit shaky for me. It doesn't look like a clear cut over or under. but I'm presenting all the information to you, and you guys ultimately will have to make the best decision for yourself here. So let's see who else is a potential standout here for an under on their assists. Do we have Bam Adebayo? No, I don't think we have any of the Heat guys up yet. Jonas Valanciunas, is he up on the board? Let's take a look. Nope, not seeing Joe Val at the moment. I don't think they have anybody from that game up just yet. Otherwise, Jayson Tatum, is he up there? There he is. Jayson Tatum, he's in a bit of a negative assist spot here versus Cleveland. Let's start with the game totals and spread here. Looks like this game just has 214.5 points, with Boston being an 8.5-point favorite. So they're expected to blow out this Cleveland Cavaliers team, and probably for good reason. The Cavs just aren't very good at basketball. So Jayson Tatum at 4 assists. Let's take a look at the various numbers for him and see if over or under is the way to go on Tatum. I've already mentioned he's kind of in a negative spot in terms of how the Cavaliers limit players like Jayson Tatum in the assist category here. So at the season average, he's at 4.4 assists, which puts him over 4 assists tonight. 4.7 for the last 30, so things are starting to actually creep up for Tatum. But then in his last 10, they dropped down to 4.1. But nonetheless, 3 overs in his different averages for the season. We can go to Basketball Reference real quick and take a look at how Tatum's been doing in his last few games just to get a better idea here. So we can look at his game logs, and you can see that in his last few, he's got 3, 6, 3, 5, and 5. So in his last 5 games, as far as 4 assists go, he's went over 4 assists in 3 out of 5. And he also kind of came close here to just going for a push here with 3 assists, but ultimately he went under. So 3 overs, 2 unders in the assist column for his last 5 games. Now, finally, we'll head on over here and look at how the betting action for Tatum is looking. And as you can see, when I type his name in, he's not coming up. So they don't have any assist props up for Jayson Tatum. But based on the way things are looking, guys, this is going to be another one of those where it's kind of dicey. The only reason that I would favor the under here is the fact that Cleveland does a pretty good job at limiting guys like Tatum to less assists than average. And the fact that this game looks like it's going to be a blowout and a low-scoring game. So maybe Tatum doesn't quite make it there in terms of going over on assists. So maybe I lean toward the under. But again, the averages don't seem to indicate that going under on Tatum is the way to go. And, you know, with basketball, most of these guys, they play up to their averages for the most part. So with that out of the way, I don't think there's anybody else that we're going to spend much time talking about. Anybody else jumping off here? I mean, we could look at Mason Plumlee real quick. He's at 3.5 assists. Normally, when you think of big guys like Plumlee, you don't see them as a high assist type of person. But let's look at Mason Plumlee. He's in a minus 18.44% spot here in terms of the amount of assists that they allow versus the average to guys like Plumlee, who is a post-up big, according to RotoGrinders. So knowing what we know there, he's in a little bit of a negative spot. We can take a look and see where he's been landing here for the season in terms of his averages for the full game, or for the full season, for 30 games and for 10 games. So we'll head on over. We'll go to the Detroit Pistons. We'll look at Mason Plumlee here. For the season, 3.8 assists puts him over 3.5. And then we look at his 30-game averages. 3.4 assists puts him under 3.5. So his assists went down, actually. And then finally, in his last 10 games, Mason Plumlee's assists have actually skyrocketed at 4.6. You got to figure with guys like DeLon Wright missing time, Blake Griffin no longer on the team. I think Jeremy Grant even missed a little bit of time. You know, those assists have went up for Mason Plumlee. We're going to look here at Basketball Reference real quick and see how Mr. Mason Plumlee's been doing in his last few games. And you can see here under the assist column, 0 assists in his last game. Then he jumps up to 6, 3, 4, and 10. So he's got some major assist performances here, which is kind of like unusual for a guy who's averaged just 2.3 assists for his career. I don't know, maybe he is adding new wrinkles to his game and becoming a better facilitator and passer. But you can see in his last 5, guys, he has went over 3.5 assists in 1, 2, 3, and he's went under in 2. So 3 overs, 2 unders on this 3.5 assists prop. Finally, let's see if they have him up on any of the sports books. We type in Plum. There's Mason Plumlee. And you can see on DraftKings, they've got him at 3.5, just like PrizePicks does. People are taking the over on that. And then if you look at FanDuel, they're taking the over there. And then finally, BetMGM, they're taking the over as well. So all 3 of these different sports books taking the over on Mason Plumlee at 3.5 assists. So that seems to be the way that people are going. I'll leave that one up to you guys. You guys let me know what you think. Is Mason Plumlee going to hit the over in what seems to be a kind of low-scoring game? I don't know. That's a tough one. Tough call. But with that being said, we can finally go and take a look at some rebound props. So we'll flip things around here, and we could take a look at some of the players that are in plus rebound positions here and see if we can find them over on PrizePicks. So we got the Brooklyn Nets up on the board. Is DeAndre Jordan up? He is not. For the Nets, it looks like it's James Harden, Kyrie Irving, Joe Harris. So can't really talk DeAndre Jordan. Who else is standing out here for Philly? We've got Tobias Harris, Ben Simmons, no Tony Bradley, no Dwight Howard. Both of those guys are in pretty good positions. How about Miles Turner? Miles Turner not on the board for rebounds. Interesting. Looks like he's been replaced here by Khris LeVert. Khris LeVert making his return to the NBA and to the Indiana Pacers recently. Oh, who else? Seth Curry. Man, he burned me the other night, last night I think it was. But he's not up on the board for rebounds today. So it doesn't look like they have anybody who is in any of these like plus spots here for rebounds on PrizePicks. So let's flip things around and see if we could find some guys who are in bad spots for rebounds. Maybe potential underplays here. Brook Lopez, Bobby Portis. There's Ben Simmons. Okay, that's kind of interesting. Ben Simmons, 6.5 rebounds on PrizePicks. He's in a minus 26% spot here versus the Milwaukee Bucks. So maybe he doesn't quite reach his rebound totals and goes under 6.5. Let's start there. That looks like a good way to go. So we'll head back over to lineups.com. We will go down to the Philadelphia 76ers. There we go. And then we'll turn on season averages. And you can see Ben Simmons, 7.9 rebounds. So that puts him well over 6.5 for the season. Now, if we look at his last 30 games, his rebounds still at 7.9. And then finally, his last 10 rebounds dropped down to just 7. So a little closer there, a little bit of a closer call. Now, one other tool that I like to utilize is this one. It's called Court IQ. It's only available here on Roto Grinders. So what we're going to do is we're going to select the Philadelphia 76ers. We are going to take Joel Embiid off of the court. We are going to run query. And this will help us see how guys like Ben Simmons and some of these other folks do when Joel Embiid's not on the court, and give us an idea of how many rebounds he averages without Embiid. So you can see here that Ben Simmons, with Embiid off the floor, he has 353.7 minutes logged without Joel Embiid on the court. Now, in those minutes that he's logged, he's averaged 8.75 rebounds per game, which is quite a bit higher than this 6.5. So it looks like this is a good spot for Ben Simmons to potentially go over. Now we can go down here and we can look at his per 36 minute totals. And if we hit total rebounds, you can get an idea of the differentials. So are guys in a plus rebound spot without Embiid on the floor? Are they in a negative rebound spot without Embiid on the floor? And if we filter things, or sort things rather, you can see that Ben Simmons gets a little bit of a bump here in terms of a per 36 minutes, 0.24 more rebounds for Ben Simmons. So it is a positive or plus spot for Ben Simmons when there is no Joel Embiid. So finally, let's look at the game totals and spread here. 235.5 points. And, the spread looks like it's going to stay pretty close, pretty competitive. So I kind of like Ben Simmons to go over here based on how many points are expected to be scored, based on the fact that without Embiid out on the floor, Ben Simmons rebounds typically go up, and he's like well over 8. So I think this is a good spot to potentially target a Ben Simmons over, despite the fact that, according to Roto Grinders, that guys like Ben Simmons versus this Milwaukee Bucks team typically rebound at a lower rate than the average. So there you have it for Ben Simmons. I'm leaning toward the over. Now, another guy that's popping up here is Khris Middleton, who appears to be in a negative spot. Now, for all the reasons that I mentioned, Ben Simmons and liking the over for him in terms of game total and spread, same applies here to Khris Middleton, as he is facing the Philadelphia 76ers. So, so far, minus 25% versus this Philadelphia 76ers team. So let's go over here and we'll head back to lineups. We'll look at the Milwaukee Bucks again. And we'll look at the season averages first. And you can see for the season, he is averaging 6.1 rebounds per game, which puts him slightly over this 6 tonight. In his last 30 games, 6.1 rebounds, so stays over 6. And then finally, 6.8 rebounds in his last 10 games. So he's been going over 6 pretty regularly all season long. Now, let's take things a step further here for Middleton and see if he has been going over in his last few games this 6 rebound number. And you can see here, if we look at total rebounds, 5.55, that's under on tonight's prop of 6. Then 10 puts him well over. And then finally, his 5th game back, 4. So he's got 4 unders, 1 over in his last 5 games. So, taking the under in his last 5 would probably be the way to go based on this 6 rebound prop here. Now, let's take a look at Middleton and see if they have him over on RotoWire. So we click the little rebound button at the bottom, type in Middleton's name, and they've got him at 5.5 on DraftKings. Now, on that 5.5, people are taking the over, which makes sense. So they think he's going to rebound the ball at least 6 times, maybe more. And then over on FanDuel, they've got him at 6.5. People seem to be taking a lot of the unders, meaning they think, based on those first 2 sites, that he's going to land right around 6. 6 is the sweet spot. Now, BetMGM, they have him at 5.5. People are taking the over. And finally, PointsBet, people are also taking a strong over on 5.5. So if this was 5.5, I would say absolutely take the over on Middleton. But the 6 makes things a little more tricky. But if I were to lean one way or the other, it would probably be toward the over on Khris Middleton at 6 rebounds, despite the fact that he's in a bit of a negative spot here in terms of rebound versus average for his archetype. So there you have it on Khris Middleton. I like the way that the over on rebounds for both Simmons and Middleton are looking. Now, we've also got Malcolm Brogdon up in a negative spot, it seems, but let's take a look at him. He's at 5 rebounds. And if we take a look at lineups.com and we go over to the Indiana Pacers, we'll start there. And we'll flip this over to season averages. You can see that for the season, Malcolm Brogdon's at 4.8 rebounds, close to 5, but not over 5. So that would put him under. His last 30 game average, 4.9 rebounds. Creeps up a little bit, ever so close to 5, but not quite there. And then finally, in his last 10 games, 6.6 rebounds. A huge jump. He's been rebounding the ball a lot better in his last 10 games. So kind of a tricky situation here. Now, looking at the game totals for this particular game, Indiana and Brooklyn, you've got over 234 points on the board. Not only that, there's a pretty tight spread here, just a 3-point spread. So I would say that there's definitely some upside for Malcolm Brogdon to go over this rebound total. We'll take a look and see how he's done in his last few games on the glass here. Has he been rebounding well or not? I don't know. We're going to look, though. So we go to this game logs here, and we look at his last few. Total rebounds, he has went over 5, landed on 5, so that'd be a push. Over, then he goes under and under. So in his last 5 games, he's got 2 games where he's went over, 2 games where he's went under, and 1 game where he has pushed. So tough spot here for Malcolm Brogdon. Tough little nut to crack. So let's finish things off by going over to the various sports books and taking a look at where the juice on Malcolm Brogdon's rebounds is tonight. So at 4.5 on DraftKings, people are taking the over quite strongly here. And then 4.5 on FanDuel, the over. 4.5 on BetMGM, they're taking the over. And finally, 4.5 on PointsBet, people are taking the over. So everybody believes that 5 or more rebounds is definitely in play here for Malcolm Brogdon. So I would lean toward the over if I was going to go one way or the other. At worst, you push. At best, he goes over 5 rebounds, and you're a happy, happy camper. Let's see if there's anybody else worth talking about here. Yeah, let's talk Giannis Antetokounmpo. We're going back to that Milwaukee Bucks game. We've already talked about Ben Simmons, Khris Middleton, and how we like them to go over. Giannis is at 11.5 in a slightly negative spot here, but you got to figure no Joel Embiid. Maybe that makes things a little easier for Giannis, and maybe a little easier for Middleton, and a little easier for Ben Simmons to go over, as Joel Embiid does suck up a lot of rebounds when he's out on the floor. So we'll start things off by looking at lineups.com. Yes, we're going back to Milwaukee. We're just jet setting all over the place in today's video. Back to Milwaukee we go. Giannis for the season, 11.7 rebounds. Puts him over tonight's projection. In his last 30, 11.7 as well. And then finally in his last 10, that number has actually went up, and he's over 12 rebounds per game in his last 10, 12.1. So we're going to take a look here over on Basketball Reference. We'll find Giannis. It's much easier to type in Giannis than it is Antetokounmpo. But we'll go back and look at his last 5 game logs and see how he's been performing recently. And if we go to the total rebound column, I mean, this dude just crushes double-digit rebounds with pretty great regularity here. So in his last 5, he went over 11.5 with 15. Then he goes under with just 11. He goes under with 10, goes under with 11, and then finally goes under with 8. So in his last 5 games, 4 unders, just 1 over. So his rebounds have been on the downside, we'll say, compared to his last 10 games. So we'd like to see him get back up here to these like 15, 14, 18, 19 numbers. Maybe we could look at his last few games against Philly and get a little bit of a better idea at how he rebounded the ball there. Does he have any previous game logs against the Sixers? He does not. Wow, really? This is their first meeting against Philly? Say it ain't so. Okay. Well, we don't have any previous game logs to go off of. But again, I'm liking the totals and the spread here, and I think Giannis has a good chance without Embiid in the lineup to possibly go over this 11.5. Maybe we can find some information out here. Okay. All right. This is what I'm talking about. DraftKings, they've got him at 12.5, which is, 12.5, which is over this 11.5. So on that 12.5, people are taking the under, meaning they think he'll go for like 12 rebounds or less, which is fine. If he goes for 12, that's good for us. That means that that we hit if we take the over here. They got him at 12.5 on FanDuel. They're taking the under. 12.5 on BetMGM. They're taking the under. And 12.5 on PointsBet. They're taking the under. So they don't think he's going to go over 12.5 rebounds, but they're not saying that he won't go for at least 12. So I'm liking the over on Giannis Antetokounmpo in this spot. I think this is a good place to take the over. But what do you guys think? What do you think of today's video? What do you think of some of the single stats that I covered? Do you think any of these guys hit or don't hit? Who's your favorite single stat play that I discussed on today's video? Drop their name down in the comments section below. And if you're liking their rebound, their assists, and the over or the under, and why. I love to hear your feedback. Thank you guys for all your support. I appreciate you guys tuning in every day. Definitely give this video a thumbs up. That lets me know that you're liking what I'm doing here. For Out of Bounds DFS, this is CJ. We'll catch you in the next one. Good luck tonight. Let's win some money. Peace.